I really appreciate this opportunity. What I want to talk to you about today, there are so many things to talk about. I could go on forever, but I want to focus today on how mindfulness meditation can be of service to people who are traumatized, in particular by suicide loss. I'm hoping that you come away today with a sense of understanding the difference between sensation and story, and the difference between reacting and responding. For suicide survivors, the idea of sitting in mindfulness meditation can be a bit intimidating because, as we all know, those symptoms of trauma response are overwhelming and severe and very disruptive. Trauma really deconstructs our world and our assumed world. We have these constructs of what we think is real, and it can be taken away, as we're witnessing with the COVID crisis right now. This is a time of trauma for a lot of people, and all of us, actually. The things that we thought were so solid and could be counted on are just not available. So we have to find ways to cope. The trouble for trauma survivors is that the way trauma impacts us, it hijacks our body and our mind. And this is a thing that I didn't understand when I was starting in my journey. My son, I was practicing for 20 years before I lost my son, and it's been 20 years since my son's been gone now. I had a background in this, but I was not prepared for the severity of the response that I had with trauma. Since that early time, I've learned more about the physiology of trauma and how it impacts us. And I know you guys are involved in this intimately because of the work that you're doing. And I'm really grateful for all of your work and how you're going to be able to provide benefit to the world. Our culture doesn't do grief, doesn't respond well to people who've been traumatized. And so those who are traumatized are doubly wounded. Not only are they hurt, but they have no place to go to get help. So kudos to all of you for engaging this work. The thing that I felt after my son died by suicide was a profound physical and emotional overload. I didn't understand it, and I didn't know how to help myself. And I couldn't find anyone who could help me. I did try to go to a therapist. That was more wounding than not. I did see a hospice social worker who was very helpful in the first week after he died. And the thing that I learned most from her, besides her kindness and her extreme compassion, was that she told me, don't ever let anyone tell you that you're doing it wrong. And that was so beneficial to me because everyone around me was telling me I was doing it wrong. They wanted me to be back. They wanted the old me. They wanted the pain to go away. Even my brother, my dear brother, who is a doctor, was a doctor, he's since deceased, but he wanted me to drug it away. He was alarmed seeing the intensity that I was experiencing, and he didn't understand that. I don't know whether it was because of my prior experience meditating and trying to find solutions and calm after other issues I had gone through. But for some reason, I knew that I needed to go toward this rather than run away. And no matter what I did to distract myself, it wasn't going away. So I did employ the usual strategies of overeating and, distracting myself. But the pain was still there. I could not distract away from it. So I wanted to read to you some passages from a book by Bessel van der Kolk. He is he's Dutch in origin, but he works in the States, I believe in the Boston area or somewhere on the East Coast. And in his book, The Body Keeps the Score, which is a really important read, he says, the engines of post-traumatic reactions are located in the emotional brain, in contrast with the rational brain, which expresses itself in thoughts. The emotional brain manifests itself in physical reactions, gut-wrenching sensations, heart pounding, breathing becoming fast and shallow, feelings of heartbreak, speaking with an uptight and reedy voice. The emotions and physical sensations that were imprinted during the trauma are experienced not as memories, but as disruptive physical reactions in the present. It is alarming when you get triggered and out of nowhere comes a reaction that just really hijacks your whole body. And people around you don't understand. Bessel van der Kolk goes on to say, almost every brain imaging study of trauma patients finds abnormal activation of the insula, the part of the brain that integrates and interprets the input from the internal organs. The insula can transmit signals to the amygdala that trigger fight-flight responses. This does not require any cognitive input or any conscious recognition that something has gone wrong. You just feel on edge and unable to focus, or at worst, have a sense of imminent doom. These powerful feelings are generated deep inside the brain and cannot be eliminated by reason or understanding. So I have observed over time that our culture, at least that I am aware of, has been dominated by the idea that we can think ourselves out of any difficulty or will ourselves to anything we desire. It's so prevalent that when something happens, like a trauma of a suicide of a loved one or a COVID-19 pandemic, we're left kind of foundering like, whoa, the ground beneath us is no longer solid and we don't know what to do to help ourselves. And our reaction to that can be coming from a place that is unconscious. So you can't even grab it with your thinking mind, which we're so used to doing. We're so accustomed to having that work for us that we're really at a loss when the ground gets pulled out from under us. So how do we approach healing if the wounding is coming from an unconscious place? Van der Kolk goes on to say, is another quote, research has shown that the only way we can consciously access the emotional brain is through self-awareness. In other words, by activating the medial prefrontal cortex, the part of the brain that notices what is going on inside of us and allows us to feel what we're feeling. Neuroscience research shows that the only way we can change the way we feel is by becoming aware of our inner experience and learning to befriend what is going on inside ourselves. So one thing that I noticed when I went back and trying to document what my experience was in the beginnings of trauma, I had all the symptoms that people experience when you see the list of them. And I made a list of them. I was spacey. I couldn't remember anything. I had a loose gut. My breathing was high. Like I couldn't actually take a full breath. There was a jerkiness to my breath, and I would notice it and say, this is so odd. You know, I don't understand this. There was a weight on my chest that felt like someone had put a boulder there. It was this huge weight. Later in my process, I experienced explosive anger. I felt alone and alienated, and even people who loved me and wanted to help me could not approach me. I would not let them close because they were not responding in any way that I could relate to. It was very frustrating for me to not be able to feel understood. And I think it was because people were just so frightened from me. I was also hypersensitive to light and to sound, so that just going out into the day was hard. Driving a car was next to impossible. I wanted to go to the grocery, and I would get to the grocery and I would look, I would walk to the door, and the graphics and the activity inside of there, you know how they hang those banners and they have all these signs, and it was overwhelming. I had to turn around and get back in my car and drive very slowly, gripping the wheel just to get home again. It was unbelievable because I'm normally a person who functions pretty well. So I didn't have a lot of experience to understand how I could help myself, and the people around me didn't understand either. So I was feeling very much alone. There's a story in the Buddhist lore that talks about the parable of the two arrows. And the story goes that in life, hard things happen. No one is immune. We all have hard things happen. But then what generally happens is after that hard thing happens, we pile on judgments, self-judgments, or ideas about what it's all about. What does it mean? What did I do wrong? Who's to blame? Enormous amount of mental conjuring to help us understand things. And it actually adds a burden to the first injury. It adds injury upon injury. And the Buddha says we cannot always control the first arrow, but the second arrow is our reaction to the first. And with this second arrow comes the possibility of choice. So this is where mindfulness comes in. Our culture has gotten confused, thinking that we should never have pain. Pain is bad. And ironically, it's our avoidance of the sensations that we're having that are uncomfortable that actually gives the second arrow. Our resistance causes us to tighten and to shut down and to try to push away. And in that shutting down, we actually cement the difficult feelings in our bodies. If we let sensations, however uncomfortable they might be, move through us unrestricted, to just let it flow through, it dissipates much faster than it would if we get tight around it. Bessel van der Kolk, again from his book, The Body Keeps the Score, goes on to explain, traumatized people chronically feel unsafe inside their bodies. The past is alive in the form of gnawing interior discomfort. Their bodies are constantly bombarded by visceral signs, warning signs. And in an attempt to control these processes, they often become expert at ignoring their gut feelings, and in numbing awareness of what is played out inside. So, given that these things are coming at us from a place that's unconscious and that we can get triggered very quickly by a sound, a vision, a song, a comment, it just comes out of nowhere. How do we approach calming this inner, very primitive response that's part of our mammalian and reptilian brainstem, that original part of us before we developed all this wonderful prefrontal cortex stuff? It's the deepest instinct in us to survive. How do we calm that when it has been triggered by trauma? And so mindfulness meditation is one tool that can be used to help us go there. The place inside of me that felt broken didn't need to be fixed. And people around me wanted me to fix it and have it go away. But that was not what I needed. What I needed was to find a way to feel what was real inside of me, and for that feeling to be held with enormous compassion. Basically, compassion for our human condition. This is what happens to us as human beings. And we need to understand that it's not going to go away. We need to be able to hold it with compassion and then let it go. Besides the visceral trauma response that gives us that second arrow, the storylines that we create in our imaginations are another form of the second arrow, adding trouble on top of trouble, pouring salt on a wound. In my case, I would get lost in the rumination of thoughts going around in my head. I could not stop it. It was like, a thought would rise and it was, oh, what did I do wrong? How could this have been better? What if only, there was no one to blame, but it must be my fault, It was mindfulness that helped me sit and calm myself and begin to notice those thoughts rising and to be able to separate fact from fiction. I was adept at being able to spin stories about why this had happened, and they weren't true, but it engaged my imagination, and we're so used to living in our thinking minds that we forget that a lot of it isn't true. A lot of the thoughts that run through our heads are simply not true. So mindfulness helped me begin to separate that and to learn better. So there are two ways that mindfulness meditation can help us not add on the second arrow. The event happens, the hurt happens, but then we bring awareness to our experience so that we can begin to calm our inner natural response that's coming out of a trauma injury. And the second one is to identify the obsessive thoughts that we're having in our mind so that we can let them go. So how do we do this? Jon Kabat-Zinn has described mindfulness meditation as paying attention on purpose without judgments. And it's the without judgments that's a really important part and hard to do. That's the mind loop going around. The paying attention is the part that helps us get in touch with our inner visceral response, as well as the thoughts. But we start where we are. A lot of people have the sense that to begin a meditation practice, you have to have knowledge or training or be widely read or have skills and be a yoga master or whatever. But no, none of that. You really, really start right here with this breath in this moment, with whatever difficulty you are experiencing. This present moment and this present difficulty holds the potential for our awareness, awakening, and our coming into an understanding of our humanity and who we are and how we can live in this life with some calm and ease, as well as be a benefit in the world, not getting tangled up in our own dramas and taking ourselves down. So we don't need to be anywhere other than where we are. We need to bring our awareness to what is happening in this moment in our bodies. We need to let go the story that's being generated by our thinking mind. We need to relax as much as we can the tension that we're feeling in our body, to notice where it is. We notice all our body sensations and we just take stock of them. This is what is happening. This is what's real right now. And we hold all of this without judgments, right or wrong. It's not right or wrong. It's simply what it is. And then we take that, what is, and we hold that with great compassion. This is the human condition. Life can be very hard. So instead of trying to escape from those feelings of discomfort, we go toward them, we sit, and we stay. And I really do profoundly thank Pema Chodron for being one of my root teachers, even though I've never met her, I've never sat with her in her physical presence, but I've been listening to tapes and reading her books for many years now. And she has such a gentle and wonderful wisdom and so much skill. And one of her, I believe it was in the Tonglen teaching where she's the good medicine tape, and she's demonstrating a sit, and I can hear her voice saying, stay, stay. And when I come to those hard places in my life where I'm trying to sit and I'm, squirrely, can get settled and uncomfortable, whatever, I can hear her in my mind going, stay, try to stay with this discomfort, breathe into it. So I discovered through my experience of suicide loss that healing is a biological, not an intellectual process. It takes time. It is not a quick fix, ever. And from reading my book, you can see that book itself covers 13 years. And I'm 20 years into this and I'm still working on it. So it doesn't happen quickly, but we start where we are. And every day can make a difference in how you're feeling and how you're managing your life. And mindfulness meditation is one of those tools that helps us gain access to our inner experience, so we can gain inner awareness and help us get out of our habit of getting lost in thought. While the practice is simple, it is not easy because it does require that we stay with discomfort. And everything in our culture urges us to move as fast as we can away from discomfort. And we do retail therapy and we do, all the things that we do to run away, but it doesn't help. We still are troubled by the things that are being held in our bodies and our minds, and we just have to come back and sit. So by sitting, we learn to befriend whatever is happening inside our body. We learn the difference between sensation and story. We learn the difference between reacting and responding. We learn that tears are sacred. We learn that there's no way to do grief wrong or right. We learn to relax and trust our body to give us the information that we need to know to move forward. And we learn to go slowly, one step at a time. So how do we do this mindfulness meditation? What is involved? The breath is the key to unlocking the mystery of presence. We come in touch with our breath. We bring our body back. So what I would like to do right now is a little practice sit, just for a few minutes, where you guys get comfortable wherever you're sitting. If you need to wiggle a little bit to get comfortable. And find yourself a comfortable position and close your eyes. And what we're going to do is, I'm going to talk while we're doing this practice sit, but I want you to just go inside and experience what you're experiencing. And if my words become invasive, just ignore them and have your own experience, okay? We start when we sit with a big deep breath. Just kind of ground in your body. Notice the feeling of you're sitting on your chair and your feet are on the floor. Trying to sit with our backs a little bit upright, not stiffly upright, but just in an upright position. And take a very brief scan of your body. We're going to just go through and notice. Our breathing is natural, not forced. Just a natural breath. Noticing the out breath. And we start to scan our head and notice wherever there might be tension. Kind of focus on your eyes and see if there's a way to relax the muscles around your eyes. And your cheeks, your jaw. Can you relax your jaw at all? Around your ears. Notice if your shoulders are up around high and reaching for your ears, and just let it go. Let them relax. Notice the tension in your shoulders. If there is any, if there's a way that you can just breathe into that tension and let it relax. It's release. Come down to your chest area. Notice your heart. Notice any pressure around your heart. Any kind of holding. And your breath. Just allow it to be natural. And bring the scan down into your belly. You notice any sensations there. If there's any discomfort, just breathe into the discomfort. And on the out breath, let it release. And we keep coming down our legs. If our hands are resting on our legs, just notice the sensation. What is the sensation of your hands resting on your legs? And of your body resting on the chair? Those contact points. Just notice and be aware. And all the way down your leg to your feet. You're grounding with the stability of the earth under your feet. Notice when thoughts arise. If thoughts arise, just label it thinking and let it go. Come back to your breath. And my attention is on my breath coming and going. Whatever I'm feeling in my body, I'm offering it compassion. Compassion for whatever thoughts are rising, for whatever sensations are there. Feeling the rising and the falling of your breath, your chest and your belly. It's very relaxed. In this moment, there's no right or wrong. It's simply exploring what is happening in our bodies. Noticing how our mind generates thoughts in a continuous stream. Always coming back to the breath. Coming back to awareness. Who is it that's aware of what's happening? What is this awareness? Noticing thoughts rise. What is aware of the sensations in my body? The thoughts rise and I can let them go. Awareness is there all the time, noticing. If thoughts crowd in, I watch them like I'm watching a stage play. Actors on a stage. Awareness observing. Grounding in the sensations in my body. Learning to stay with discomfort. Never forcing, never avoiding. Just what's true. Not what I imagine is true, but what is really true. If I'm having a sensation in my body, I can ask, where is it in my body? What is this tightness? Can I relax and release the constriction? What is underneath the sensation? Can I follow it and go deeper? What happens when I breathe into a sensation? Breathing into that place, bringing my breath of awareness into the sensations in my body. Can I offer it compassion? Notice how awareness and thoughts are not connected. Awareness is observing thoughts. The thoughts arise, they're present, and they dissipate. I'm noticing the sensations in my body. If something's uncomfortable, I notice it arise, be present, and dissipate. Gradually, I'm able to create some spaciousness where I notice between the awareness and the thoughts, there is space. I don't need to jump into those thoughts. I don't need to follow them. I don't need to get carried away by them. That spaciousness gives me the chance to ground in my body, to ground in the sensations of sitting, breathing, feeling the flow of energy in my body. And the reactivity that wants to come, I can just notice and let it go. Honoring our bodies and our awareness, honoring the difficulties that come. They are our teachers. They are helping us grow in awareness. Okay, so gently bring yourself, with a big deep breath, bring yourself your eyes open. Love and loss are life. That's what we do here. And allowing the pain of loss to move through us is essential for discovering what it is to be human. Through my grief, I was transformed. The person that everyone wanted back, and that person no longer exists. But in that profound breaking apart that I experienced, I discovered what I had been studying for years and attempting to understand. It's in the breaking apart and the experiencing of our vulnerability with help and with mindfulness practice, we begin to understand what it is to be human, and that we are all here together experiencing a lot of the same stuff, hard things. And that by connecting with that place of vulnerability in ourselves, in our hearts and our bellies, we can begin to offer ourselves compassion for what it is to be a human being. And then we can offer that compassion out. Pema talks about the Tonglen. Did I already talk about Tonglen? That was just so helpful to me, to take my pain and to breathe it in, all the difficulty of it, and then on the out breath to offer a healing to everyone who has ever felt that difficulty. And on every breath, getting closer to what it really feels like to feel that difficulty, to experience that difficulty in my body. And then on the out breath to offer healing and renewal to everyone, to myself and everyone. And in that process, I was profoundly healed. It was taking it in and experiencing it and then offering compassion. It's the awareness and compassion, wisdom and compassion. These are the two wings of how we proceed in this life and how we find a way to come back from deep trauma. It affects us, it changes us, But in that process, if we can allow it to touch us in a very gradual way, not trying to do too much at once, we can find that place of stability and calm inside of ourselves, where then we have a place to respond rather than react. You know, when that trauma response comes and we do the knee jerk and it's got us. And instead of like jumping into that reactivity, we can say, okay, that trauma response, I've been triggered. Okay, I can breathe into this. I can breathe and allow my body to process this difficulty, this difficult sensation that's rushing through me, this tsunami of tears and sadness that is overwhelming me. I can allow the tears to come. I can feel them flow through, and then I can release. And that's how, by training ourselves over time, we begin to understand how to approach that visceral, unconscious reactivity and to train it very gently, like we can come back. I can come back and I can take my habit of sitting and my habit of allowing, and I can trust. I need a Kleenex. I got a runny nose. I can trust and understand that this too shall pass. This is not all there is. Adyashanti is a teacher whom I respect, and he says, our greatest challenges and our greatest revelations always have to do with the heart. Trying to avoid the pain of loss and building scenarios about what it all means turns our natural grieving into suffering, wanting things to be different than they are. It shouldn't be happening, or I'm not worthy, or any number of things that we say. In fact, what is happening, and we are worthy, and we can find a way through our inner wisdom and accessing our inner wisdom to learn how to process and be present with difficulty and grow past it. Grief is transformative as well as regenerative. And if we allow ourselves to go through this process, we can find a way to not only heal, but then be energized to come back to offer help to others. And this is what's so important. When we don't go there and we don't do the work, we end up just cycling down and getting into a rumination trough and energetically being depleted. We want to find a way to return to life and to be able to offer help to those who are also undergoing difficulty. And this is incredible to come back from a place I did not imagine that I could survive. In fact, we all know from the stats that suicide survivors are at greater risk of dying by suicide. This is real. And I know personally that is real because part of my trauma response was not so much that I wanted to die, but that I really didn't care about living anymore. Just like, what's the point? And I got shaken awake after about being, I don't know, maybe 10 months into my grief by running 2 red lights. And it's like, bam, that woke me up big time. What have I done? Not only have I endangered myself, which I didn't really care about, but I was endangering other people. And I realized I need to go back to my practice and sit. I already knew from my history of working with mindfulness that it was a benefit to me and could help me when times were hard. But I got it that this was the only thing I needed to sit and ground and get serious about my practice. And I know that this saved my life. So I offer this awareness to you guys, and with enormous respect for you and the work you're doing, and just want to hear your questions. And I'm just deeply interested to know where you are with this, because I think that it's in doing this work together that we grow. So thank you.